I have seen beautiful buildings that are hundreds of years old. And ironically, those buildings, when kept up, are still a testament to man's ability to build. Beautiful castles such as Balmoral, Buckingham, on and on and on. Buildings that are old and yet solid as a rock. Sure, they need repair, they need upkeep, they need remodeling. But as long as those buildings have one thing, a strong foundation, those buildings will last perpetually as long as they're maintained. America is a building. She's a great building. She's a city on a hill. She's tall and grandiose. All the nations look to this building and honor this building. However, as long as America forgets her foundation, and as long as her citizens are not continuously checking that foundation, then America will crumble and America will fall. President Donald John Trump, the 45th president, often used this mantra, "Make America great again." Many people interpreted that in different ways, but I truly believe that this is what he meant by that mantra. Raise up the foundations of America. Restore the great foundations of America. In this video, hello, I'm Professor Toto, your local neighborhood professor, and I'm here today to teach you the 10 bedrocks that makes America great, that keeps her from crumbling. And as long as you and I, as patriots, will fight for the foundations, as long as we will focus on the foundations, teach them to our children, teach them to our grandchildren, then there's hope for this great building, this great city of America. There's hope for her future. But if we continue down the trajectory that we are on today, when we continue down the path of forsaking the foundations, the principles, the ancient landmarks that we were built on, then I'm not so sure about America's future. And that's where you come in. That's where I come in. We can make America great again if we're educated and if we educate others as to what her greatness is. In this series of lessons called Restoring the Foundations, I'm going to teach you in 10 separate parts about those 10 foundational principles that we must fight for. You want to make America great? Return to the foundation. Stone number 1 in this lesson that we're going to focus on is what I believe to be the cornerstone, the most important stone in our foundation. And it's called Christian faith and biblical morality. Now, most people's first response when I say Christian faith is to come back with the separation of church and state. That's the biggest fallacy, the biggest lie that's ever been told. And it's told by the left because they have people like Jerry Nadler, little nitpick Nadler, that despises the faith of America. It was him that stood up just a few days ago in the halls of that sacred center of the Republic, the Congress of the United States. And he said these words, and I quote, "The will of God is of no concern to this Congress." Jerry Nadler's words places him miles apart from those that made up the first Congress of this nation, those that were laying the foundation of this nation, they would have nothing in common with little nitpick Nadler. No, they wouldn't. Because they understood that they were building a Christian nation founded upon Christian faith and biblical principles. But the more we forget that, the more the foundation begins to crumble. And the Bible said, if the foundations be destroyed, where will the godly stand? We must have a foundation. As a matter of fact, the Word of God tells us in the book of Matthew chapter 7, verse 24, that the wise man builds his house on a rock, a solid foundation. So when the rain comes and the wind blows and beats against the house, it will not fall because it had the foundation of a rock. America has a foundation of a rock. That's why we've existed these 3 centuries, because the foundation was strong. I want us to look at these principles, these 10 rocks of the foundation, and let's see if we can't restore them, one child at a time, one family at a time, here in the United States of America. I'm going to start this lesson from the Declaration of Independence. Thomas Jefferson wrote these words: "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights." The key word in that founding document, that foundational document, is the word creator. Creator. In one of our most important founding documents, we accept the fact, we acknowledge the fact, we come into agreement with the fact, and we publish the fact that we have a creator, that we did not come from evolutionary means. We acknowledge in the foundation that we are mere humans that are unable to do anything without the help of that creator. This is what our foundation says, that we come from a creator, and that all the rights we have as citizens does not come to us from government or king, but it comes to us from God. Now, the Christian faith had a very significant role in the founding of this nation because it had a pivotal role in the founders of this nation. When you think of our founders, these men come from Great Britain. They came from England, a Christian nation. Their background is the principles of Christianity. The United States of America was born in Christian faith and biblical morality. George Washington said in the Writings of Washington, page 342, "To the distinguished character of a patriot, it should be our highest glory to add the more distinguished character of a Christian." One of our great leaders said in our foundational period of this nation that it's great to be a patriot, but we should have a more distinguished character than that of a Christian. Not a Muslim, not a Buddhist, not a Hinduist, not a pagan, not a New Ager, not a No Ager, not a Every Ager. No. He specifically referred back to a Christian character. George Washington said, "It is the duty of all nations to acknowledge the providence of Almighty Yahweh, to obey his will. Now, Nadler just said that the will of this creator was of no concern to the United States Congress. But here is a founder. Here is an early leader that said it is the duty of a nation to acknowledge the creator and, more importantly, to obey his will. Do you see how far we're drifting from the foundation of America? And then he said to be grateful for this God's benefits and to humbly implore his protection and his favor. Now take that statement and compare it to where we are now with little nitpick Nanny Nadler standing in our house saying we have no concern of the will of God, when it was George Washington that said it's the duty of a nation to seek to obey the will of God. The foundations are crumbling in this great building of America. He made that proclamation in 1789. Let me read to you what Thomas Jefferson said when he wrote Notes to the State of Virginia on page 237. God, who gave us life, gave us liberty. And can the liberties of a nation be thought secure when we have removed their only firm basis? A conviction in the minds of the people that these liberties are the gift of God, that they are not to be violated but with his wrath. Indeed, I tremble for my country when I reflect that God is just and that his justice cannot sleep forever. Founding principles. This is a founder talking. This is a founder speaking. Jefferson is saying that our liberties come from Yahweh, and that we put ourselves in line for his judgment if we forget this. Let's look at what John Hancock said in the History of the United States of America, Volume 2, page 229. Resistance to tyranny becomes the Christian and the social duty of each individual. Continue steadfast and with a proper sense of your dependence on God. Nobly defend those rights which heaven gave, and no man should be able to take away from us. John Hancock just proclaimed that it is your duty to resist tyranny. He or she is to be dependent on God and to defend your rights which come from God. What about John Adams? He wrote a letter to Zabdiel Adams in 1776. Here's the words. Statesman, my dear sir, you may plan and speculate for liberty, but it is religion and morality alone which can establish the principles upon which freedom can securely stand. Did you hear that? He said, my fellow statesmen, you may dream about liberty, and you may dream about an America with liberty, but when you get rid of God and morality, biblical morality, then the principles of freedom have nowhere to stand. Because if freedom comes from God, and yet you try to move God out of the equation, you lose your freedom. Here's another statement from John Adams in October of 1798. Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. Here's what he said. If you want to know what's going on in America today, he warned about this. You cannot have a constitution like ours when you take God out of the equation. Now, as of late, the left has tried to force a doctrine on all of America that there should never be a mention of religion, that we should separate church and state. This is told by the political left. But did you know that this does not appear anywhere in our Constitution? But you would think it did to listen to those that support it. No, this idea of the separation of church and state comes from a letter written from Thomas Jefferson to a minister by the name of Danbury, who was a Baptist minister in the state of Connecticut. This Baptist minister was afraid that the new nation would try to do what England did. England created the Church of England. They officially favored one denomination over all the other religious sects. They officially made the queen or the king head of that church, giving that church preeminence over all the other churches. In other words, in England, if you don't belong to the Church of England, you're a little bit lower down on the social ladder. And so these ministers never wanted to see one sect of Christianity elevated to a national religion. And so Thomas Jefferson wrote to him and said there's a wall between the church and the state, and this wall would make sure that there's never a national religion above all others, or Christian sects. The matter of fact, the First Amendment says Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of a religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. The truth is, the founders did not want a national church, but they did want the Christian faith to continue to have an influence on the life, the culture, and the civic affairs of our nation. We know this because of the words of Supreme Court Justice Joseph Story in 1833. I quote, "The real objective of the First Amendment was not to countenance, much less to advance Islam or Judaism or infidelity, which is atheism, by prostrating Christianity, but to exclude rivalry among the Christian sects, and to prevent any national ecclesiastical establishment which would give a hierarchy to a national religion." In other words, the First Amendment was not to advance Islam and all the other religions and put down Christianity, but actually it was there to make sure that the Christian sects all got along and that one was not elevated above another. 67 years after the ratification of the Constitution in 1854, Congress House Judiciary Committee released a statement revealing the separation of church and state to be totally bogus. I quote, this comes from the Congressional Record, March the 27th, 1854. Listen. At the time of the adoption of the Constitution and the amendments, the universal sentiment was that Christianity should be encouraged. That was the religion of the founders of the Republic, and they expected it to remain the religion of their descendants. Congress went on to record on the record to place Christianity, but no denomination, but Christianity as the faith to be encouraged throughout the nation, because it was the faith held by the framers, and they expected it to be that of their descendants. This does not verify the separation of church and state that so many desire. It is a lie. It is a big lie that the left would love for you to believe. That we should keep God out of our schools, God out of our courtrooms. Nothing could be further from the lie. Nothing could be further from the truth. It's a total lie. And as we lose these foundations, the building called America, the city called America, begins to crumble. Remember those old castles in England. As long as the foundation's okay, we can deal with anything else. In America, as long as our foundations are okay, we can deal with anything we face. But as the foundation is destroyed, our future is bleak. You should teach this to your children, to your grandchildren, to your progeny, to everyone you have influence over. They should know these truths. They should love these truths. You should promote these truths. This is what we must do to make America great again. We must restore the Christian faith and biblical morality to our government, to our Congress, to our Senate, to the White House, to the Supreme Court, and to the local government. This is why it's so important that the Christian believers watching me become involved in your local politics. God bless you. Have a wonderful day.